The November wind cut through Chicago's North Shore like a blade, carrying with it the smell of Lake Michigan and the promise of an early winter. Inside the Cole mansion, however, warmth radiated from every corner. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors, and the murmur of conversation mixed with classical music, floating from a string quartet positioned near the grand staircase. Emily Carter moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, her black uniform crisp and her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. At 23, she had mastered the art of being present without being seen, a skill essential for anyone working in Nathan Cole's world. She refilled champagne glasses, removed empty plates, and kept her eyes down, though she saw everything. "More champagne here," a woman in a diamond necklace called out, barely glancing at Emily. "Of course, ma'am." Emily's voice was soft, professional. She poured carefully, noting the slight tremor in her own hands. Tonight felt different. The air held a tension she couldn't name, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. Across the room, Nathan Cole held court near the fireplace. At 39, he commanded attention without effort. Tall, dark-suited, his presence filling whatever space he occupied. People gravitated toward him, eager for his approval, fearful of his disapproval. He ran legitimate businesses on paper: construction, real estate, import-export. But Emily knew, as everyone in this room knew, that Nathan Cole's real power came from what happened in the shadows. She had worked in his household for 6 months, just another face among the staff. She needed this job, needed the money, needed to be close to this world for reasons she kept buried deep in her chest. Every day she walked through these halls, she reminded herself why she was here, what she needed to understand. Emily, Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, appeared at her elbow. The older woman's face was creased with worry lines that seemed deeper tonight. "Mr. Cole wants fresh coffee in his study. Take it up now, please." "His study? During the party? He has business. You know how it is. Go now." Emily nodded and made her way to the kitchen, her mind already cataloging the layout. The study was on the second floor, east wing overlooking the gardens. She had cleaned it dozens of times, but never when Nathan was conducting business. The staff knew to stay away during those moments. She prepared the coffee service carefully: French press, cream, sugar, his preferred dark roast. The kitchen buzzed with activity as caterers prepared the next course. Through the window, she could see security personnel stationed around the property more than usual. Something was definitely wrong tonight. Carrying the silver tray, Emily climbed the servants' staircase. The sounds of the party faded as she moved deeper into the private areas of the mansion. The hallway was quiet, carpeted, lined with expensive art that she had dusted 100 times without really seeing. At the end of the hall, light spilled from beneath the study door. She knocked softly. "Coffee service, Mr. Cole. Leave it outside." His voice was sharp, distracted. Emily set the tray on the hall table and turned to go, but something made her pause. Through the thick door she heard raised voices, Nathan and someone else, a man she didn't recognize. The words were muffled, but the tone was unmistakable. Anger, accusation. She should leave. She knew the rules, but her feet wouldn't move. "You think I don't know?" The other man's voice rose. "You think I'm that foolish? I think you should remember who you're talking to." Nathan's voice was cold, controlled, dangerous. Emily forced herself to walk away. Whatever was happening in that room, it wasn't her concern. She had her own reasons for being here, her own questions that needed answers. Getting involved in Nathan Cole's immediate problems would only complicate everything. She had just reached the staircase when the world exploded. The blast threw her forward, and she hit the wall hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. Her ears rang with a high-pitched whine. For a moment she couldn't process what had happened. 1 second the hallway was normal, the next it was chaos. Smoke billowed from the direction of the study. Flames licked at the wallpaper. The expensive art lay shattered on the floor. Below, screams erupted from the party. Footsteps thundered in all directions. People running, shouting, desperate to escape. Through the ringing in her ears, Emily heard the crackle of fire spreading, hungry and fast. She should run. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Instead, she stumbled toward the study. The door hung off its hinges and heat rolled out in waves. Smoke burned her eyes, her throat. She pulled her jacket over her mouth and pushed inside. The room was destroyed. Furniture overturned, papers burning, the window blown out completely. Cold November wind fed the flames, making them dance higher. And there, collapsed near the desk, was Nathan Cole. Mr. Cole. Emily dropped to her knees beside him. Blood ran down the side of his face from a gash on his temple. His eyes were half open, unfocused. "Can you hear me?" He mumbled something incoherent. The fire was spreading faster now, consuming the curtains, racing across the expensive carpet. Smoke filled the ceiling, dropping lower with each second. Emily grabbed Nathan's arm and tried to pull him up, but he was easily twice her weight and barely conscious. "You have to help me." "Come on, you have to move." Below, more screams, the sound of breaking glass, someone shouting orders. "Evacuate, everyone out, move, move, move." Security would be rushing people out the front, away from danger. No one would think to come up here. No one would know Nathan was still inside. "Please," Emily begged, coughing as smoke filled her lungs. "I can't do this alone. Please get up." Nathan's eyes focused slightly. He looked at her without recognition, without understanding, but some survival instinct kicked in. He tried to push himself up, and Emily got her shoulder under his arm, taking as much of his weight as she could. They stumbled toward the door. Each step felt like miles. The heat was intense now, blistering. Emily's lungs screamed for clean air. Her eyes streamed tears. But she kept moving, kept dragging Nathan forward one agonizing step at a time. The hallway was an inferno. Flames blocked the main staircase. Their original escape route was gone. Emily's mind raced. The servants' stairs. They had to reach the servants' stairs. "This way," she gasped, half dragging, half carrying Nathan in the opposite direction. He was more alert now, moving his feet, but still leaning heavily on her. Blood from his wound dripped onto her shoulder. The servants' staircase was narrower, darker, filling with smoke but not yet consumed by flames. Emily guided Nathan down, one step at a time. Her legs shook with exhaustion. Her shoulder burned where Nathan's weight pressed down, but she kept going. Halfway down, Nathan stumbled and they both nearly fell. Emily caught herself against the wall, her palm burning against the hot surface. Almost there, just a little farther. They burst into the kitchen, and the change was startling. Less smoke here, cooler air flowing in from the open back door where staff had evacuated. Emily guided Nathan through, out into the cold November night. The back lawn was chaos. Staff members huddled in groups, some crying, others just staring at the burning mansion in shock. In the distance, sirens wailed. Red and blue lights flickered at the end of the long driveway. Emily lowered Nathan onto the grass, away from the building. She collapsed beside him, gasping for air, coughing violently. Her throat felt raw, stripped. Everything hurt. "Emily." Mrs. Chen appeared, her face pale with horror. How did you—" "He was in the study," Emily managed between coughs. "Someone had to—" "You went back in?" Mrs. Chen stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "You went back into that fire?" Other faces appeared now. Security personnel, finally regrouping. One of them, Marcus, Nathan's head of security, pushed through the crowd. He was a tall man with sharp features and sharper eyes, the kind of person who noticed everything. "Mr. Cole." Marcus dropped to his knees beside Nathan, checking his pulse, examining the wound on his head. Then he looked at Emily, really looked at her, and something flickered in his expression. Surprise. Calculation. "You brought him out?" Emily nodded, not trusting her voice. Everyone else ran. Marcus's voice was flat, stating a fact. "But you went back in." "I heard the blast, I was close, Emily coughed again, unable to finish. Nathan stirred, his eyes opening more fully. His gaze found Emily, sharp now despite the injury, piercing even in his vulnerable state. He studied her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. "Who are you?" His voice was rough from smoke, but the question was clear. "Emily Carter. I worked in your house, sir." "Why?" The single word held a universe of questions. Emily met his eyes and saw the intelligence there, the suspicion. Nathan Cole hadn't built his empire by trusting people. He would want to know why she'd risked everything to save him, and she didn't have an answer that wouldn't raise more questions. "I don't know," she said finally, honestly. "I just couldn't leave you there." Paramedics arrived, breaking the moment. They surrounded Nathan, checking vital signs, preparing to transport him. Another team approached Emily, but she waved them off. "I'm fine. Just smoke. Help the others." Marcus stood, already on his phone, barking orders. The fire department had arrived in force, hoses trained on the burning mansion. Police cars blocked the driveway. In the distance, news vans gathered like vultures. Emily watched it all from the grass, shivering in the cold wind, her uniform ruined by smoke and ash. Her hands shook. Delayed reaction. Adrenaline fading. What had she done? Why had she done it? She had come to this house for answers about her past, about what had happened to her family 8 years ago. She had come to understand the man who had shaped her life from the shadows. And now, in one impulsive moment of courage or madness, she had saved his life. As paramedics loaded Nathan into an ambulance, he looked back at her one more time. Their eyes met across the chaos, and Emily saw the question still burning there, sharper than any flame. Why would you save me? She didn't have an answer. Not one she could say out loud. Not yet. The ambulance doors closed, and Emily was left on the lawn, surrounded by the wreckage of the night, knowing that everything had changed. She had stepped out of the shadows, and Nathan Cole would not forget her now. The mansion continued to burn behind her, flames reaching toward the dark November sky, consuming secrets and destroying evidence. But some truths, Emily knew, couldn't be burned away. They remained, buried deep, waiting for the right moment to surface. And that moment, she suspected, was coming faster than she was ready for. The hospital room was unlike any Emily had ever seen. Private, spacious, with furniture that looked more appropriate for a luxury hotel than a medical facility. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Chicago's skyline, the city lights twinkling against the early December darkness. This wasn't the emergency room where regular people went. This was where power bought privacy. Emily sat in the hallway outside, waiting. She had refused treatment beyond basic oxygen therapy, insisting she was fine despite the persistent cough that rattled her chest. 3 days had passed since the fire. 3 days of police questions, insurance investigators, and journalists trying to get her story. Mrs. Chen had told her to go home, rest, that the household staff would be on paid leave while things got sorted out. But Emily couldn't leave. Not yet. The door opened, and Marcus stepped out. His sharp eyes found her immediately, and something like annoyance crossed his features. "You're still here. Is he awake?" "He's been awake. He's been asking questions." Marcus leaned against the wall, studying her with that calculating gaze she found deeply unsettling. "About you." Emily's heart skipped. "What kind of questions?" "The kind you'd expect. Background checks, employment history, where you came from, why you were hired." Marcus crossed his arms. "You're clean." "Suspiciously clean, actually. No criminal record, no debts, no connections to any rival organizations. You're exactly what you appear to be. A 23-year-old woman who needed a job and happened to be in the right place at the right time. Or the wrong place, Emily thought, depending on how you looked at it. He wants to see you," Marcus continued. "Now." Emily stood, smoothing her jeans nervously. She had gone home once to shower and change, trading her ruined uniform for civilian clothes. Without the black dress and apron, she felt exposed, visible in a way she hadn't been for months. Marcus opened the door for her, but didn't follow. Word of advice? Don't lie to him. He'll know. The room was dimmed, afternoon light filtering through partially closed blinds. Nathan sat up in the hospital bed, looking far more alert than she'd expected. A bandage covered the wound on his temple, and monitors beeped softly beside him, but his eyes were clear and sharp as they locked onto her. "Emily Carter." He said her name like he was testing it, tasting it for truth. "Sit." It wasn't a request. Emily took the chair beside the bed, her hands clasped in her lap. "The doctors tell me I'm lucky to be alive," Nathan began, his voice measured. "The blast should have done more harm, but someone pulled me out before the worst of it could reach me." He paused. "That was you?" "Yes, sir." "Don't call me sir. Not after what you did." Nathan shifted slightly, wincing. "I've been in this business a long time, Emily. I've seen loyalty, I've seen betrayal, I've seen people act out of fear or greed or ambition, but I've never seen someone risk their life for no reason. So I'll ask you again. Why?" Emily had spent 3 days thinking about this question, preparing an answer that would satisfy him without revealing too much. But sitting here now under the weight of his gaze, the prepared words felt hollow. "I don't know," she said finally. "I heard the blast. I was right there. Everyone was running, and I just thought, someone needs to check. Someone needs to make sure no one's left behind." "Heroic." Nathan's tone made the word sound like an accusation. "Do you know what I do, Emily? The kind of man I am? I've worked in your house for 6 months. I have some idea. Then you know that people don't help men like me out of the goodness of their hearts. They help because they want something, or because they're afraid of what happens if they don't." He leaned forward slightly. So which is it? Neither. Emily met his eyes, forcing herself not to look away. I didn't think. I just acted. Maybe that was stupid. Stupid or brave. Sometimes they're the same thing. Nathan studied her for a long moment. Marcus ran a full background check on you. You're from Pittsburgh originally. Father deceased when you were 15. Mother passed 2 years ago. No siblings. Moved to Chicago 8 months ago. Worked 2 restaurant jobs before applying to my household staff. You're quiet, reliable, stay out of trouble. He paused. Why Chicago? Emily's chest tightened. This was dangerous territory. I wanted a fresh start. Pittsburgh had too many memories. Memories of what? Loss, pain, the kind of things everyone runs from eventually. Nathan nodded slowly as if accepting this, but Emily could see him filing away every word, every hesitation. The police have questions about the explosion. They think it was intentional. Someone trying to send a message or eliminate a problem. They'll want to talk to you again. I told them everything I know. Which is nothing because you were just a maid in the wrong place at the right time. Nathan's expression softened almost imperceptibly. That's going to be your story. You saw nothing suspicious, heard nothing unusual before the blast. You were delivering coffee and reacted on instinct when the explosion happened. Understand? You want me to lie to the police? I want you to survive this. The people who set that explosion, Emily, they're still out there. And now you're connected to me. You saved my life, which means you've painted a target on your back. The words settled over Emily like ice water. She hadn't thought about that, had been too focused on the immediate aftermath to consider the larger implications. You think they'll come after me? I know they will. It's already started. Nathan gestured to his phone on the bedside table. Marcus intercepted 2 attempts to find out where you live. Someone tried to bribe one of my former staff members for information about you. These aren't idle threats, Emily. These are professionals. Fear crawled up Emily's spine. What do? You accept my protection. You move into a secure location somewhere my people can watch over you. You let me keep you safe until we find whoever did this and handle them. Handle them? Emily's voice was barely a whisper. Nathan's expression hardened. This isn't your world, and I won't drag you deeper into it than necessary. But the reality is simple. You're in danger because of what you did for me. I don't forget debts, Emily. I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. No, Nathan agreed. But I'm responsible for you now, whether you like it or not. Emily wanted to argue, to insist she could take care of herself, return to her small apartment in Pilsen and resume her quiet life. But she wasn't naive. She had seen enough in 6 months working for Nathan Cole to know how his world operated. Threats weren't empty. Danger was real. And if she went home, she would be vulnerable. How long? She asked. Until it's safe. Could be weeks. Could be longer. And what do you expect in return? Nathan's lips curved in something that might have been a smile. Honest answers when I ask questions. That's all. It was a trap. Emily knew. She had secrets that couldn't survive honest interrogation. But the alternative was worse. Okay, I'll accept your protection. Good. Nathan reached for his phone, typing quickly. Marcus will take you to a secure apartment downtown. It's comfortable, private, well-guarded. You'll have everything you need. Try not to leave without letting someone know. Try not to trust anyone you don't have to. Including you? This time Nathan did smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. Especially me. The apartment was in a high-rise near Millennium Park, the kind of building with doormen and security cameras and neighbors who minded their own business. Emily's new home was on the 23rd floor. 2 bedrooms, modern kitchen, living room with windows overlooking the city. It was beautiful and impersonal, like a very expensive cage. Marcus had driven her there himself, barely speaking during the 20-minute ride. He'd given her a phone, new, secure, with only 2 numbers programmed in, his and Nathan's. Use this. Don't use your old phone. Don't contact anyone from your previous life until we say it's safe. Previous life, as if the past 8 months had been erased in one explosive moment. Emily stood at the window now, watching Chicago shimmer in the winter twilight. Snow had started to fall, soft and steady, coating the city in white. Somewhere out there, people were going about their normal lives, working, loving, surviving, without the weight of secrets pressing down on them. She had come to Chicago with a purpose. 8 years ago, her father had disappeared. The official story was that he'd abandoned the family, run off with debts he couldn't pay and problems he couldn't solve. But Emily had never believed it. She'd spent years searching for answers, following thin leads and dead ends. until finally she'd found a connection. Her father had worked for Nathan Cole, and then he'd vanished. Emily had taken the job in Nathan's household to get close, to find evidence, to understand what had happened. She'd imagined confronting him eventually, demanding truth. She had never imagined saving his life. Her phone buzzed. The new one. A text from an unknown number, though she suspected who it was. "How's the apartment?" Emily typed back. "Comfortable, thank you." The response came quickly. "Get some rest, we'll talk more tomorrow." She set the phone down and moved to the bedroom, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The events of the past 3 days crashed over her in waves. The explosion, the fire, the impossible decision to run toward danger instead of away from it. Why had she done it? The question haunted her. She could tell herself it was instinct, heroism, basic human decency. But deep down, Emily knew the truth was more complicated. She had saved Nathan Cole because she needed him alive. She needed answers that only he could provide. And now, trapped in this beautiful apartment under his protection, she was closer to those answers than ever. But at what cost? Emily lay in the unfamiliar bed, watching snow fall past the window, and wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. She'd thought she could control this situation, maintain distance while gathering information, but that distance was gone now. She was entangled in Nathan Cole's world in ways she couldn't have predicted. And the worst part? She wasn't sure she wanted to escape anymore. Sleep came eventually, fitful and filled with dreams of fire and smoke and sharp eyes that saw too much. When Emily woke, dawn was breaking over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day, a new reality. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Marcus and 1 text from Nathan. "Breakfast meeting, 9 a.m., be ready." Emily showered and dressed carefully, choosing clothes that were professional but not too formal. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Marcus already in the living room, holding a coffee and looking impatient. "Mr. Cole wants to meet at his temporary office. We need to leave in 10 minutes. Temporary office? The mansion is under investigation. He's set up elsewhere until things are resolved." Marcus handed her the coffee, black, which she didn't usually take, but she accepted it anyway. "He has questions. Be prepared. I thought we covered everything yesterday." Yesterday was courtesy. Today is business. Marcus's expression was unreadable. "He likes you, Emily. He respects what you did. But don't mistake that for trust. Nathan Cole doesn't trust anyone. He can't afford to." The warning was clear. Emily nodded, drinking the bitter coffee, preparing herself for whatever came next. She had wanted to get close to Nathan Cole to understand the man who had shaped her life from the shadows. Now she had her chance. But as the elevator descended toward the lobby and the winter morning waiting beyond, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was falling, deeper into a world she didn't understand, toward answers that might destroy everything she thought she knew. The truth was coming. She had saved Nathan Cole's life to find it. Now she just had to survive what came after. The temporary office was a penthouse suite in the Loop, all glass and steel with views that stretched across the Chicago skyline to Lake Michigan beyond. Emily had expected something darker, more secretive, but Nathan Cole's workspace was surprisingly corporate. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, shelves lined with legitimate business documentation. If you didn't know better, you'd think he was just another successful entrepreneur. Nathan stood at the window when Marcus escorted her in, his silhouette sharp against the morning light. He'd been released from the hospital 2 days ago, and though he moved carefully, the bandage on his temple was smaller now, barely visible beneath his dark hair. "Emily, thank you for coming." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Coffee? Something to eat?" "I'm fine, thank you." Nathan settled into his own chair, studying her with that penetrating gaze she was beginning to recognize. "How are you adjusting to the apartment?" "It's very nice. More than I need. But not what you want." "It wasn't a question." Nathan leaned back slightly. "You want to go home, back to your life, pretend none of this happened. Unfortunately, that's not an option yet. Have you found who was responsible?" "We're getting closer. The investigation revealed some interesting details." Nathan pulled a folder from his desk drawer, opening it carefully. "The explosive device was sophisticated, planted in my study sometime during the party. Security footage shows nothing. Whoever did it knew our blind spots. But we did find something. A partial fingerprint on a fragment of the timer mechanism." Emily's pulse quickened. "Do you know whose?" "We're running it through various databases. It takes time." Nathan closed the folder. "But that's not why I asked you here. I want to talk about you, Emily. About your father." The words hit like a physical blow. Emily's carefully maintained composure cracked. "What about my father?" Thomas Carter. Worked in logistics and transport in Pittsburgh. Disappeared 8 years ago when you were 15, leaving behind a wife and daughter with significant debts. Nathan's voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes watched her closely. The official story was that he ran away, couldn't handle his responsibilities. But you never believed that, did you? Emily's hands clenched in her lap. How do you know about my father? Because I make it my business to know about people who work for me, especially people who risk their lives to save mine. Nathan leaned forward. Your father didn't run away, Emily. He worked for me. Briefly. 8 years ago. The room tilted. Emily had suspected this, had spent months trying to confirm it, but hearing Nathan say it out loud made it real in a way that research never could. What happened to him? He was involved in a transport operation that went wrong. Very wrong. Several people were hurt. Others lost substantial investments. Your father was responsible, whether through incompetence or intention, we never determined which. Nathan paused. He disappeared before anyone could question him properly. You're lying. Emily's voice shook. My father wasn't incompetent. He wouldn't have just run away. I'm telling you what I know. What everyone in my organization believed at the time. Nathan's expression remained neutral. But you don't believe it either. That's why you came to Chicago. That's why you applied to work in my house. You were looking for answers. Emily stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You knew? This whole time? You knew who I was? I didn't know until after the fire. Marcus's background check was thorough, but the connection to your father, that took deeper digging. The name Carter is common enough, but once I started looking specifically, the pieces came together. Nathan stood as well, moving around the desk. Sit down, Emily, please. We need to talk about this. Why should I believe anything you say? You're the reason my father is gone. You're the reason my mother spent years struggling, dying with debts she couldn't pay, wondering what she did wrong to make her husband leave. You're right to be angry, but I'm not your enemy here. I didn't make your father disappear, Emily. I wanted answers as much as you do. Emily remained standing, trembling with 8 years of suppressed rage and grief. What really happened? Nathan sighed, a sound that carried unexpected weight. Your father was transporting goods for me. Legal goods, actually, though connected to less legal business partners. The shipment was intercepted, not by police, by rivals. 3 of my people were hurt in the confrontation. $2 million in merchandise was lost. Your father was driving the truck, but he wasn't there when we found it abandoned. We assumed he'd been taken, or had run, or was involved in setting up the ambush. We never found out which. You looked for him? For a while. But resources are finite, and your father wasn't the only problem I was dealing with at the time. Eventually the search stopped. He became another mystery, another casualty of business. Nathan's voice softened slightly. I'm sorry, Emily. I know that's not enough, but I am. Emily sank back into the chair, her legs suddenly weak. 8 years of questions, and this was the answer? Her father had been involved in something that went wrong and then vanished, leaving nothing but speculation and pain. I don't understand. If you knew this might happen, why did you involve him? Why put him in danger? Your father came to me. He needed money. Your mother's medical bills, I believe. Early stages of the illness that eventually took her. He was desperate, willing to take risks for the right price. I gave him an opportunity. The job should have been routine. Nathan returned to his chair. I've thought about that night many times over the years. What I could have done differently. What signs I might have missed. You expect me to believe you feel guilty? I expect you to believe I'm human enough to recognize when my decisions have consequences. Your father's disappearance, your mother's suffering, your life turned upside down. Yes, Emily, I carry that. I carry all of it. The admission hung in the air between them. Emily searched Nathan's face for deception, for manipulation, but found only weary honesty. It didn't erase her anger, but it complicated it in ways she hadn't anticipated. Why are you telling me this now? Because you saved my life. Because you deserve the truth, and because— Nathan hesitated, a rare moment of uncertainty. Because I think your father's disappearance and the explosion at my mansion might be connected. Emily's breath caught. What? How? The fingerprint we found on the timer mechanism. We got a match this morning. Nathan pulled another document from the folder, sliding it across the desk. It belongs to a man named David Chen. He worked for me 8 years ago. He was part of the transport operation the night your father disappeared. Emily stared at the document, a personnel file with a photo of a middle-aged Asian man, stern-faced and unremarkable. I don't understand. Why would he target you now? Because he blames me for what happened that night. 3 people were hurt in that ambush. David's brother was one of them. He survived, but was permanently injured, unable to work. David left my organization shortly after, disappeared into the criminal underground. We'd heard rumors over the years that he was working with various rival groups, but nothing concrete. And now he's trying to eliminate you? It appears so. But there's more. Nathan leaned forward. David Chen was the last person to see your father alive. He was in the truck when it was abandoned. If anyone knows what really happened that night, it's him. The revelation struck Emily like lightning. After 8 years of dead ends and unanswered questions, she was suddenly one person away from the truth. Where is he? We're looking. David is experienced at staying hidden, but the explosion was bold, reckless. He made mistakes we can exploit. Nathan's expression hardened. When we find him, I'll make sure you get your answers, Emily. That's a promise. Why would you do that for me? Because you saved my life. Because this situation is partially my responsibility. And because... Nathan paused again, seeming to choose his words carefully. Because I understand what it's like to live without answers. To have the past consume you until there's nothing else. For the first time since entering the office, Emily really looked at Nathan Cole, not as the powerful, dangerous man whose world she'd infiltrated, but as a person carrying his own burdens. There was something in his eyes, a shadow of old pain that matched her own. What happened to you? She asked quietly. That's a story for another time. Nathan stood, moving back to the window. Snow had started falling again, dusting the city in white. For now, we focus on finding David Chen and getting you the answers you deserve. But Emily, I need you to understand something. When we find him, the truth might not be what you hope for. Your father might have been a victim, or he might have been complicit. Are you prepared for either possibility? Emily joined him at the window, watching snow swirl between skyscrapers. I've spent 8 years imagining every scenario. Whatever the truth is, I need to know it. I need to stop wondering, even if it destroys the memory you have of him. My memory is already destroyed. At least the truth would give me something solid to stand on. Nathan nodded slowly. Then we have an agreement. I help you find out what happened to your father. In return, you continue to trust me. Stay under my protection and let me do what's necessary to keep you safe. What's necessary meaning what? Meaning that when we find David Chen, there will be a confrontation. It won't be pleasant. I need to know you can handle that. Emily met his eyes steadily. I've been handling unpleasant truths my whole life. I think I can manage one more. The days that followed took on a strange rhythm. Emily remained in the secure apartment, but Nathan visited regularly, often bringing case files and information about the investigation. They would sit at her dining table, spreading documents across the surface, piecing together the puzzle of that night 8 years ago. Emily learned that her father had been recruited specifically because he had no previous connections to Nathan's organization, a fresh face that rival groups wouldn't recognize. The transport route had been carefully planned, avoiding known danger zones. But someone had leaked information. The ambush had been too precise, too well-timed to be coincidental. David Chen was inside the truck when it was hit, Nathan explained one evening, pointing to a map. He managed to escape during the confusion. He said your father panicked, ran in the opposite direction. By the time David got to safety and could call for help, your father was gone. The truck was empty. No body, no blood, no signs of struggle. Just gone. David could be lying. He could have done something to my father and blamed the ambush. Possible. That's why we need to find him and ask the right questions. Nathan's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his expression shifting. Marcus just sent a lead. Security footage from a warehouse on the south side shows someone matching David's description. We're moving on it tonight. Emily stood immediately. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. This could be dangerous. It's about my father. I have a right to be there. Nathan studied her for a long moment. If you come, you stay in the car with Marcus. You don't get involved in the confrontation. Those are my conditions. Fine. I mean it, Emily. This isn't a negotiation. David Chen is desperate and dangerous. I won't risk you getting hurt. The concern in his voice surprised her. Over the past weeks, their relationship had evolved from employer-employee to something more complex. Not quite friendship, not quite partnership, but a connection built on shared purpose and reluctant trust. I understand, Emily said. I'll stay with Marcus, but I need to be there. Please. Nathan nodded. Get your coat. We leave in 20 minutes. The warehouse was in an industrial area near the river, surrounded by abandoned factories and empty lots. Snow had accumulated in thick drifts, making the landscape look almost peaceful despite the decay underneath. 3 black SUVs pulled up to a building with broken windows and graffiti-covered walls. Emily watched from the back seat as Nathan and 6 of his security team approached the entrance. They moved with military precision, weapons drawn, but held low. Marcus remained with her, engine running, eyes scanning the surroundings. "How long will this take?" Emily asked. "Depends on whether David is actually inside and whether he decides to cooperate." Marcus's hand rested on his own weapon. "Mr. Cole is good at persuasion, but some people need more convincing than others." They waited. 10 minutes stretched into 20. Emily's nerves wound tighter with each passing moment. This was it. The answers she'd been searching for were inside that building, so close she could almost touch them. Then gunfire erupted. The sound was sharp, unmistakable, shattering the winter quiet. Marcus swore, reaching for his radio. "Team 2, what's your status?" Static, then a voice crackling through. "Contact, multiple hostiles. David wasn't alone." More gunfire. Emily's heart hammered in her chest. Through the broken warehouse windows, she could see muzzle flashes, figures moving in the darkness. "Stay in the car," Marcus ordered, already moving toward the door. But Nathan, "I said stay." Marcus was out, running toward the warehouse, leaving Emily alone in the vehicle. She should listen, she should stay put. But the thought of Nathan in danger, possibly hurt again because of circumstances connected to her father, was unbearable. Emily fumbled with the door handle, stepping out into the snow. The cold hit her immediately, but adrenaline kept her moving. She ran toward the warehouse, staying low, her breath coming in white clouds. The gunfire had stopped, replaced by shouts and the sound of a struggle. Emily reached the entrance, pressing herself against the wall. Inside, she could see Nathan and his team confronting several men. David Chen was there. She recognized him from the photos, with his hands raised but his expression defiant. Blood ran from Nathan's knuckles, and one of his security guards was down, clutching his shoulder. "You destroyed my family," David was shouting. "My brother can't walk because of you, because of that transport, because you put us in danger for your profit. Your brother was hurt because someone leaked the route." Nathan's voice was cold, controlled despite the chaos. "Someone told our rivals exactly where we'd be and when. That someone was you, David. You set up the ambush. You sold us out." David's face twisted. "I needed the money. They offered me more than you ever did." "And Thomas Carter? What happened to him?" At her father's name, Emily's breath stopped. David laughed bitterly. "Carter figured it out. He realized the ambush wasn't random. He confronted me, said he'd tell you everything. So I handled it." "How did you handle it?" Nathan's voice was deadly quiet. "I made sure he couldn't talk. I made sure he'd never be a problem again." David's smile was cruel. "You want to know what happened to him? Look in the river. That's where problems disappear in this city." The words hit Emily like a physical blow. Her father hadn't abandoned them. He hadn't run away. He'd tried to do the right thing, and David Chen had ended him for it. She must have made a sound. A gasp, a sob, something. Because suddenly all eyes turned toward the entrance where she stood. Nathan's expression shifted from anger to alarm. "Emily, no." But David was faster. He lunged sideways, grabbing a weapon from one of his fallen associates, swinging toward Emily with desperate violence. Nathan moved, tackling David before he could fire. They hit the ground hard, struggling for control of the weapon. Marcus and the other security personnel rushed forward, but in the chaos the situation was spiraling. Emily stood frozen, her father's fate finally confirmed. The truth she'd sought for 8 years now, a brutal reality that left her hollow. The struggle ended with David restrained, weapon kicked away, Nathan standing over him breathing hard. "Get him out of here, I want him somewhere secure. He has more to answer for." Marcus grabbed David roughly, hauling him toward one of the SUVs. The other guards followed, leaving Nathan and Emily alone in the warehouse entrance. "You weren't supposed to leave the car," Nathan said, but there was no anger in his voice, only concern. "He took my father." Emily's voice broke. "He ended my father because my father tried to do the right thing." Nathan moved closer, and for a moment Emily thought he might touch her, offer some physical comfort, but he stopped just short. "I'm sorry, Emily. I'm so sorry you had to hear it that way. Is it true? The river? We'll search. We'll do everything we can to recover, to bring him home." Nathan's voice was gentle in a way she'd never heard before. "But yes, I believe David was telling the truth. Your father discovered the betrayal and paid the price for his integrity." Emily felt tears freeze on her cheeks. 8 years of questions, answered in the worst possible way. Her father hadn't abandoned them. He'd tried to protect them, to stop the danger, and had been taken from them for it. He was a good man, she whispered. Yes, Nathan agreed. He was, and he deserves justice. I promise you, Emily, David Chen will answer for what he did. Not just to your father, but for everything. They stood in the snow-covered darkness, two people bound by tragedy and circumstance, by debts paid and truths finally revealed. Emily had come to Chicago seeking answers. Now she had them, and they were both better and worse than she'd imagined. Her father hadn't been a coward, he'd been a hero, and that knowledge, painful as it was, gave her something to stand on, something solid and true in a world that had felt uncertain for far too long. Thank you, Emily said finally, for helping me find the truth. Nathan nodded. It's what you deserved, what you've always deserved. He gestured toward the SUV where Marcus waited. Come on, let's get you somewhere warm. We can talk more tomorrow, figure out next steps. As they walked through the snow, Emily realized that everything had changed again. The truth about her father freed her in some ways, but bound her more tightly to Nathan in others. She had saved his life, and he had given her answers. They were connected now by something deeper than employer and employee, deeper than protector and protected. They were connected by understanding, of loss, of justice, of the weight that came with knowing the truth. And in Nathan Cole's dangerous world, that connection might be the most dangerous thing of all. The interrogation room was in a building Emily didn't recognize, somewhere on the industrial edge of Chicago where questions could be asked without interference. She sat in an observation room with one-way glass, watching as Nathan and Marcus questioned David Chen. The man who had taken her father sat handcuffed to a metal table, his earlier defiance replaced by calculating survival instinct. You set up the ambush 8 years ago, Nathan said, his voice measured. You took payment from the Volkov organization to leak our transport route. Your own brother was hurt in the process. Thomas Carter discovered what you'd done and confronted you. Then you ended him to protect yourself. David stared at the table. I want a lawyer. This isn't that kind of conversation. Nathan leaned back in his chair. We're past lawyers, David. We're at the part where you tell me everything, and I decide whether you live through the next 24 hours. Marcus stood in the corner, arms crossed, a silent and intimidating presence. Emily watched through the glass, her emotions a tangled mess of grief, rage, and something else she couldn't quite name. Justice, maybe, or vengeance. The line between them felt impossibly thin. The explosion at your mansion, Nathan continued, that was you. Why now? Why after 8 years? David's jaw tightened. Because you owe a debt. My brother suffered because of your business, and you never made it right. You moved on like he didn't matter, like none of us mattered. So you decided to eliminate me and frame it as a rival organization's work? I decided you should feel what we felt. Loss, pain, everything taken away in one moment. David's eyes lifted, meeting Nathan's with bitter hatred. But that girl ruined it. The maid. If she hadn't pulled you out, you'd be gone and I'd be free. Emily's hands clenched. She had saved Nathan, and in doing so, had brought David's plans crashing down. The irony wasn't lost on her. The daughter of the man David had ended had become the reason for his failure. Who else was involved? Nathan's tone shifted, becoming colder. The explosive device was sophisticated. You didn't build that alone. Who helped you? No one. I worked alone. Wrong answer. Nathan stood, nodding to Marcus. We found communications on your phone, David. Encrypted. But we have people who specialize in breaking encryption. We know you've been in contact with someone inside my organization. Someone who gave you access to the mansion during the party. Who told you about security blind spots. David's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Then let me refresh your memory. Nathan pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the table. These messages, sent to a burner phone over the past 6 months. Planning meetings, layout discussions, timing coordination. You had help from someone close to me, David. Tell me who. The silence stretched. Emily leaned closer to the glass, her heart pounding. An inside betrayal explained how David had managed to plant the explosive device without detection. But who would have that kind of access? Who would risk everything to help David Chen exact his revenge? If I tell you, David said finally, I need protection. Witness protection. Somewhere far from Chicago. New identity. New life. You're not in a position to negotiate. Then I'm not talking. David sat back, attempting confidence he clearly didn't feel. You need this information more than I need to give it. Nathan studied him for a long moment, then turned and walked out of the interrogation room. Seconds later, he appeared in the observation room where Emily waited. "He's going to make us work for it," Nathan said, frustration evident in his voice. "But he'll break eventually. They always do." "Who could it be?" Emily asked. "Who has that kind of access to your security?" "That's the question that's been keeping me up at night." Nathan moved to the window, looking out at the gray December afternoon. "My inner circle is small. Marcus, obviously, but I'd trust him with my life. My financial manager, Rebecca Torres, she's been with me for 12 years. My lawyer, James Patterson, handles sensitive matters, and then there's—" He stopped, his expression darkening. "Who?" "Richard Kane. He manages my legitimate real estate holdings, but he has connections throughout the organization. He was at the mansion the night of the explosion." Nathan pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "Marcus, run a deep background on Richard Kane. Financial records, communications, travel history, everything." Marcus's voice came through the speaker. "On it. What are we looking for? Anything that connects him to David Chen or the Volkov organization. Anything that suggests divided loyalty." Emily watched Nathan's face, seeing the weight of betrayal settling over him. "You trusted these people." "Trust is a complicated thing in my world. You learn to trust people with specific things, not everything. But even limited trust, when broken, leaves damage." Nathan turned back to her. "You should go back to the apartment. This is going to take time, and you don't need to be here for all of it. I want to stay. I want to see this through. Emily, he took my father from me. I deserve to be here when the truth comes out." Her voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. Nathan studied her, and Emily saw something shift in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition of her resolve. "All right, but stay in this room. No matter what you see or hear in there, you stay here. Understood?" "Understood." 3 hours later, Marcus appeared with information that changed everything. Richard Kane withdrew $500,000 in cash over the past year, Marcus reported, spreading documents across a table in the observation room. The withdrawals were small enough not to trigger immediate alerts, but together they form a pattern. He also made 3 trips to Pittsburgh in the last 18 months. No business reason for any of them. "Pittsburgh," Emily breathed. "That's where David was hiding after he left Chicago." Nathan picked up one of the documents, his jaw tight. "Richard has been moving money to David, helping him stay hidden while they planned this. 8 years I've employed him. 8 years he smiled to my face and took my money while plotting my demise." "There's more," Marcus continued. "Richard's younger sister is engaged to David Chen's nephew. They kept the connection quiet. Different last names, no public association. But the family tie is there." "Family." Nathan's voice was bitter. "Always comes down to family, doesn't it? Richard helped David because of blood connection, because he believed the narrative about my responsibility for David's brother's injury." "Do we bring Richard in?" Marcus asked. "Not yet. I want to know how deep this goes, who else might be involved." Nathan turned to Emily. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. David said someone gave him access to the mansion. Richard could provide information, but he wasn't at the house the day of the explosion. Someone else had to physically help David plant that device." Emily's mind raced through the events of that night. The household staff had been busy with party preparations. Security had been focused on the guests. But there had been that moment, that odd exchange in the kitchen. "Mrs. Chen," Emily said suddenly, "the head housekeeper. She's the one who sent me to your study with the coffee service. She specifically told me to go right then, insisted it couldn't wait even though the party was in full swing." Nathan and Marcus exchanged glances. "Mrs. Chen is David's cousin," Marcus said quietly. "We vetted her years ago, but the connection seemed distant enough not to matter. She's been with the household for over a decade. She would have had access to everything," Emily continued, the pieces falling into place. "She could have let David into the mansion, shown him where to plant the device, known exactly when you'd be in the study. And she sent me up there right before the explosion because she needed a witness," Nathan finished. "Someone to confirm I was in the study when it happened. Someone who would look innocent and unconnected." His face hardened. "She sent you into danger without a second thought. Used you as an unwitting part of the plan." The realization hit Emily hard. Mrs. Chen, who had been kind to her, who had taught her the household routines and complimented her work, she had been willing to sacrifice Emily to achieve David's revenge. "Where is she now?" Nathan asked Marcus. "She's been on paid leave since the explosion, like all the household staff. Last known address is an apartment in Bridgeport." Pick her up, quietly. I want her in a room separate from David. They shouldn't know we have both of them." Nathan's voice was cold, controlled fury. "And find Richard Kane. I don't care what excuse you have to use. Bring him in." Marcus left immediately, taking 2 security personnel with him. Nathan remained in the observation room with Emily, both of them processing the scope of the conspiracy. 3 people, Emily said. 3 people working together to take you down, and they almost succeeded. They would have succeeded if not for you. Nathan turned to face her. "That's what keeps running through my mind, Emily. Everything that happened that night. If you had run like everyone else, if you had valued your own safety over mine, David's plan would have worked perfectly. I'd be gone, and no one would have known about the betrayal until much later, if ever. Why do you think I didn't run?" The question hung between them. Nathan moved closer, and Emily found herself holding her breath, aware of the intensity in his gaze. "I've been asking myself that since the moment I woke up in the hospital," Nathan said quietly. "At first I thought it was coincidence, instinct. Then I thought maybe you had your own agenda. But now, after everything we've been through, after learning about your father and seeing how you've handled the truth, I think you saved me because somewhere in that moment, you saw me as a person worth saving. Not the reputation, not the power, just the person." Emily swallowed hard. "You gave me answers about my father. You could have hidden the truth, protected yourself from my anger, but you didn't. You helped me find closure even though it complicated everything between us. We're not so different, you and I. Both shaped by loss, both searching for meaning in a world that took things from us without asking." Nathan's voice softened. "I didn't expect this, Emily. Any of it. But I'm grateful you're here." Before Emily could respond, Marcus's voice crackled through the speaker. "Boss, we have Mrs. Chen. She's asking for a lawyer, but I think she'll talk when she realizes what we know. Richard Kane is being picked up now. Should be here within the hour." "Good. Keep them separated. I'll start with Mrs. Chen." Nathan straightened, the moment of vulnerability passing as he shifted back into the role of leader. "Emily, you should stay here. This is going to get difficult." "I can handle difficult." "I know you can. That's not what concerns me." Nathan paused at the door. "What concerns me is whether you should have to handle it. You've already endured so much because of my world." "This is my choice," Emily said firmly. "I'm staying." The interrogation of Mrs. Chen was brief but devastating. Faced with evidence of her involvement and separated from David's influence, the older woman broke quickly. Yes, she had helped her cousin gain access to the mansion. Yes, she had sent Emily to the study at precisely the time David needed a witness. No, she hadn't considered that Emily might be hurt, or that her actions might result in harm to an innocent person. "David said no one would be injured," Mrs. Chen insisted, tears streaming down her face. "He said it would just be Mr. Cole, that he deserved it for what happened to David's brother, for what happened to Thomas Carter." "You knew about my father?" Emily's voice cut through the speaker system before Nathan could stop her. Mrs. Chen looked up at the one-way glass as if she could see Emily behind it. "I knew Thomas tried to expose David's betrayal. I knew David had to protect himself. I didn't agree with it, but I understood it. Family protects family. Even when family is wrong? Even when innocent people suffer? You don't understand how this world works, child. Sometimes there are no good choices, only necessary ones." Nathan ended the interrogation, his expression grim. When Richard Kane arrived 30 minutes later, the lawyer-turned-traitor was defiant until confronted with the financial records and communication logs. Then, like dominoes falling, his resistance collapsed. "David Chen approached me 2 years ago," Richard admitted. "He knew about my connection through his nephew. He told me what Nathan had done, how the organization had benefited while his family suffered. He asked for help getting justice. I thought I was doing the right thing. The right thing would have been bringing your concerns to me directly," Nathan said coldly. "Instead, you chose betrayal, conspiracy, and attempted homicide. You helped plant a device that could have harmed dozens of innocent people at that party. I didn't know it would be so destructive. David said it would be contained, targeted, that only you would be affected. And you believed him because it was convenient to believe him, because it absolved you of responsibility for what you were really doing." Nathan leaned forward. "You've destroyed your life, Richard. Your career, your reputation, your freedom. Was it worth it?" Richard had no answer. By the time all 3 conspirators had been questioned and their statements recorded, night had fallen over Chicago. Emily stood at the observation room window, watching snow fall through the streetlights, feeling exhausted in ways that went beyond physical tiredness. Nathan appeared beside her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He offered her one silently. "It's over," Emily said. "You have everyone who was involved. The threat is eliminated." "Yes. Now comes the difficult part, deciding what to do with them." Nathan sipped his coffee. "In my world, there are traditional ways of handling betrayal, permanent solutions that ensure the problem never resurfaces." Emily felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter night. "And what will you do?" "That depends on what you need from this situation, Emily. David Chen took your father from you. Mrs. Chen and Richard Kane enabled him, made it possible for him to threaten your life. You have a stake in this decision. Are you asking me if I want them to?" Emily couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm asking what justice looks like to you. What outcome gives you peace?" Nathan set down his coffee, turning to face her fully. "I won't pretend I'm offering mercy out of pure morality. I'm offering it because you matter to me, Emily. Your opinion, your needs, they matter in ways that few people's do. So tell me what you want." Emily thought about her father, about the years of wondering and grief, about the truth that had finally emerged. She thought about Mrs. Chen's tears and Richard's rationalizations and David's bitter rage, and she thought about the cycle of violence that Nathan's world perpetuated, where every act of revenge spawned another, where justice and vengeance became indistinguishable. "I want them to face consequences," Emily said slowly. "Real consequences, not just disappearing into the night. I want David Chen to acknowledge what he did to my father, to take responsibility publicly if possible. I want Mrs. Chen and Richard to understand the weight of their choices, but I don't want their lives ended, Nathan. That doesn't give me peace. That just makes me complicit in the same cycle that took my father." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. "You're asking me to show mercy. I'm asking you to choose a different path. For me, yes, but also for yourself." Emily met his eyes. "You told me once that you understood what it's like to live without answers, to have the past consume you. Maybe this is a chance to break that pattern, to choose something other than the expected response. If I show mercy, it could be seen as weakness. Other people who might think about betraying me might see it as an opportunity, or they might see it as strength, as the confidence to make choices that don't fit the pattern everyone expects." Emily's voice was earnest. "You've already changed my life, Nathan. You gave me answers when you could have kept me in the dark. You protected me when you could have sent me away. Maybe it's time to change your own life too." Nathan turned back to the window, watching snow accumulate on the street below. Emily waited, knowing that whatever he decided would define not just the fate of 3 conspirators, but the nature of their relationship and possibly the direction of Nathan's future. "All right," Nathan said finally. "We'll do it your way. David, Mrs. Chen, and Richard will be turned over to authorities with enough evidence to ensure prosecution. Legitimate prosecution through legitimate channels. They'll face justice in courtrooms, not in the shadows." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. This decision makes things more complicated. Police investigations, trials, public attention. My organization's activities will be scrutinized more closely. Some of my business operations will need to change or end entirely. Is that such a bad thing?" Nathan looked at her, and Emily saw something in his expression. Vulnerability, hope, fear all mixed together. "I don't know. Change is never simple in my world. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's time." Marcus entered the observation room, his expression carefully neutral. "The authorities are on their way. We've prepared documentation that presents the evidence cleanly without exposing operational details. David, Mrs. Chen, and Richard will be charged with conspiracy, attempted homicide, and related offenses. The district attorney's office is very interested in prosecuting." "Good," Nathan nodded. "Make sure Emily's father's case is included in the investigation. David's confession about Thomas Carter needs to be part of the official record." "Already done." They're reopening the missing person case as a potential homicide investigation based on David's statements. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. After 8 years, her father's disappearance would finally be taken seriously by the authorities. There might never be a body to bury, never be complete closure, but there would be acknowledgement. There would be truth in the official record. "What about you?" Marcus asked Nathan. "If this goes to trial, you'll be subpoenaed. Your businesses will be examined. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny?" "I'll handle it. Time to clean house anyway, separate the legitimate operations from everything else. It won't be easy, but..." Nathan glanced at Emily. Maybe it's necessary. After Marcus left to coordinate with the authorities, Emily and Nathan stood together in the observation room, watching through the one-way glass as David Chen sat handcuffed and defeated in the interrogation room. My father tried to do the right thing, Emily said quietly. It got him taken from us, but he tried. I think he'd be proud that his daughter chose mercy over revenge. I think he'd be proud of you regardless. You're stronger than most people I've ever met. Emily Carter. Braver too. I learned from him, and from my mother, who kept going even after he was gone. And, Emily hesitated, then continued, from you. Watching how you've handled this situation, how you've balanced your world with trying to do right by me, it's shown me that people can change, that strength comes in different forms. Nathan reached out, his hand hovering near her shoulder, before withdrawing. When this is all over, the investigations, the trials, the aftermath, you'll be free to go. Back to your life, anywhere you want. I'll make sure you have resources, protection if needed, recommendations for whatever path you choose. You're already planning my departure? I'm planning your freedom. It's what you came to Chicago for. Answers about your father. You have those now. You don't need to stay in my world anymore. Emily turned to face him fully. What if I want to stay? Not because I need protection, not because I'm searching for answers, but because I choose to. The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither had fully explored. Nathan's expression shifted through surprise, caution, and something else. Something that looked like hope. My world is dangerous, Emily. Even cleaned up. Even more legitimate. It's not a simple life. I'm not looking for simple. I'm looking for purpose. For meaning. I thought that meant finding out what happened to my father, but maybe it means more than that. Maybe it means figuring out who I am after the answers, not just before them. Nathan studied her face, searching for certainty. If you stay, things between us, they can't be what they were. You're not my employee anymore. You're not someone under my protection out of obligation. If you stay, it has to be as an equal, as someone who chooses this life with full knowledge of what it means. I understand. Do you? Because once you make this choice, Emily, there's no going back to being invisible. People will know you're connected to me. They'll make assumptions, judgments. Some will try to use you to get to me. Others will resent your influence. It's not an easy path. Neither was growing up after my father disappeared. Neither was watching my mother struggle and fade. Neither was spending 8 years searching for answers that no one else cared about. Emily's voice was steady, certain. I'm not afraid of difficult paths, Nathan. I'm only afraid of walking away from something real because it might be complicated. For the first time since she'd known him, Nathan Cole smiled. Really smiled. Not the practiced expression he wore for business, or the cold satisfaction of strategy, but genuine warmth that transformed his face. Then stay, he said simply. Stay and help me figure out what comes next. God knows I could use someone who sees clearly, who isn't afraid to push back, who chooses mercy when violence would be easier. I can do that. I know you can. That's why I'm asking. Outside, police vehicles were arriving, red and blue lights flashing against the snow. Inside, 3 people who had conspired to commit violence would face justice through channels that didn't involve retribution or revenge. And in the observation room, 2 people who had been brought together by tragedy and fire stood side by side, watching one chapter close and another begin. Emily had come to Chicago seeking answers about the past. She had found them, along with something she hadn't expected, a future that was uncertain but genuine, complicated but honest, dangerous but real. As Nathan moved to meet with the authorities and Emily prepared to give her statement about the events of the past weeks, she felt her father's presence like a whisper in her heart. He had tried to do the right thing in an impossible situation. Now his daughter would do the same, not by running from complexity but by embracing it, not by choosing safety but by choosing purpose. The truth had set her free. Now she would decide what to do with that freedom. And for the first time in 8 years, Emily Carter knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. She wanted to stay. She wanted to build something new from the ashes of the past. She wanted to see if Nathan Cole could really change his world, and she wanted to help him do it. It wasn't the ending she had imagined when she first came to Chicago. It was better. Spring arrived in Chicago like a promise kept. Slowly at first, then all at once. The snow melted, revealing a city that had survived another brutal winter. Trees along Michigan Avenue bloomed with pale green leaves, and Lake Michigan lost its gray winter pallor, turning almost blue under clearer skies. Emily stood on the balcony of her new office, watching the city wake up. 6 months had passed since the night of the explosion, since everything changed. The apartment Nathan had provided was no longer temporary housing. It had become home, and the office where she stood now represented something she'd never imagined for herself, a legitimate role in Nathan Cole's transformed business empire. "You're here early." Nathan's voice came from the doorway. He held 2 cups of coffee, a routine they'd established over the past months. "Couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind." Emily accepted the coffee gratefully. "The trial starts next week." "I know." Nathan joined her on the balcony. "Are you ready?" "As ready as I can be." "Testifying against David, Mrs. Chen, Richard? It's necessary, but it doesn't feel good." "Justice rarely does, it's just necessary." Nathan sipped his coffee, looking out at the skyline. "The district attorney thinks they have strong cases against all 3. David especially. His confession about your father, combined with the evidence from the explosion, should result in significant prison time." Emily nodded, feeling the familiar ache that came whenever she thought about her father. The police investigation had confirmed David's account. Divers had searched the river locations he'd described, though nothing had been recovered. Thomas Carter remained officially missing, but the case was now classified as a probable homicide. It wasn't the closure Emily had hoped for, but it was acknowledgement. It was truth in the official record. "How are you feeling about your testimony?" Emily asked. Nathan's expression tightened. "Complicated. I'll have to discuss aspects of my business operations that I've kept private for years. The prosecutor assured me they're only interested in what's relevant to the conspiracy case. But once you start pulling threads, everything unravels." Over the past 6 months, Nathan had been systematically restructuring his empire. The legitimate businesses, real estate, construction, import-export, were being fully separated from anything questionable. Operations that couldn't be cleaned up were being shut down entirely. It was costly, complicated, and met with resistance from some of his former associates. But Nathan had been resolute. "No more shadows," he'd told Emily one night as they reviewed corporate documents. "If I'm going to build something that lasts, it has to be able to survive daylight." The transformation hadn't been easy. Some people in Nathan's organization had left, unwilling to accept the new direction. Others had tried to undermine the changes, seeing them as weakness. But Nathan had held firm, and gradually a new structure had emerged. Smaller, cleaner, more sustainable. Emily had played a role in that transformation. Her outsider perspective, her ability to see patterns and ask difficult questions had proven valuable. Nathan had offered her a position as a special consultant, handling community relations and ethical oversight for his businesses. It was unprecedented. Someone with no background in his world, no connections to the old power structures, given real authority. "People will question why I chose you," Nathan had warned. "They'll assume nepotism or other motivations. Let them assume what they want. I'll prove my value through work, not explanations." And she had. Emily had thrown herself into understanding Nathan's business operations, identifying areas where community investment could benefit both the bottom line and the neighborhoods his developments affected. She'd established scholarship programs, job training initiatives, partnerships with local organizations. It was slow, careful work, but it was making a difference. "I have something for you," Nathan said now, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "It came this morning." Emily opened it carefully. Inside was a letter from the Chicago Police Department's Missing Persons Unit. Her breath caught as she read, "Dear Ms. Carter, we are writing to inform you that the investigation into your father, Thomas Carter, has been officially reclassified. Based on evidence provided by David Chen's confession and corroborating witness statements, we have determined that your father was the victim of a criminal act. While we have been unable to recover physical remains, we want you to know that your father is no longer considered a voluntary missing person. He has been recognized as a victim, and his case will remain open as an active investigation." Tears blurred Emily's vision. They acknowledged him. After all these years, they finally acknowledged what really happened. Nathan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Your father tried to do the right thing in an impossible situation. That's documented now. His integrity is part of the official record. My mother never stopped believing in him. She died thinking everyone else saw him as a coward who abandoned his family. I wish she could have known the truth. Maybe she did know. In the ways that matter, she knew who she married. She knew the man he was, regardless of what others thought." Nathan's voice was soft. "You've honored both of them, Emily. By seeking the truth, by refusing to accept the easy narrative, That takes courage. They stood in silence for a moment, the morning sun warming the balcony. In the distance, the city hummed with activity, people going to work, living their lives, building futures, one day at a time. "I've been thinking about something," Emily said, folding the letter carefully. "I want to establish a foundation in my father's name, for families dealing with missing persons cases, especially when the disappearances are connected to organized crime. Resources for investigations, support for families, advocacy for policy changes. That's a significant undertaking. I know, but I have resources now. I have your support and connections, and I have experience navigating systems that don't always work for regular people." Emily turned to face Nathan. "Will you help me?" "Of course, we'll get the legal framework established, identify initial funding sources, build a board of directors." Nathan's expression was thoughtful. "The Thomas Carter Foundation. It has a good ring to it. He tried to expose corruption and paid with his life. The least I can do is make sure his name stands for something positive, something that helps others in similar situations. He'd be proud of you, Emily. Not just for this, but for everything. How you've handled the truth, how you've chosen to move forward, how you've refused to let anger consume you." Emily smiled. "I had good examples. My father, who chose integrity even when it was dangerous. My mother, who chose resilience even when it was exhausting. And you," she paused, meeting Nathan's eyes, "who chose change even when it was costly. I had good motivation." Nathan's voice carried warmth she'd come to recognize over the months. "Someone showed me that strength comes in different forms, that mercy isn't weakness, that the future doesn't have to repeat the past." Their relationship had evolved into something neither had anticipated. Not romantic. The power dynamics, the age gap, the complicated history made that inappropriate, but something deeper than simple friendship. They were partners in the truest sense, bound by shared experience and mutual respect. They challenged each other, supported each other, pushed each other to be better. Marcus appeared in the office doorway. "Sorry to interrupt. Nathan, the attorneys need to review your testimony preparation. And Emily, you have a meeting with the Community Development Board in 30 minutes. Real jobs with real schedules," Emily said with a slight smile. "Still getting used to that. Better than the alternative," Nathan replied. "Go handle your meeting. I'll deal with the attorneys. We'll debrief this evening? Dinner at Luigi's? My treat this time. You don't have to. I want to. You've done enough for me. Let me return the favor occasionally." After Emily left for her meeting, Nathan remained on the balcony, thinking about the past 6 months and the journey that had brought them here. The explosion that should have ended his life had instead transformed it. Emily Carter, the maid who ran toward danger instead of away from it, had become the catalyst for changes he'd never thought possible. The trial would be difficult. There would be questions, scrutiny, judgment. Some of his past actions would be exposed, examined, criticized. But for the first time in his adult life, Nathan wasn't approaching a crisis with violence or intimidation. He was approaching it with honesty, accepting responsibility for his choices while working to build something better. It was terrifying. It was liberating. It was real. 1 week later, the trial began. Emily sat in the courtroom as prosecutors presented evidence against David Chen, Mrs. Chen, and Richard Kane. The proceedings were methodical, clinical, reducing the trauma of that November night to facts and timelines and physical evidence. When Emily took the stand, she told her story clearly. The explosion, the fire, the decision to return for Nathan, the weeks of revelation that followed. Defense attorneys tried to shake her testimony, suggesting ulterior motives or coached responses. But Emily remained steady. "I saved Nathan Cole because someone needed to," she stated firmly. "I stayed in his world afterward because I chose to. No one coerced me. No one manipulated me. I made my own decisions based on my own values." Nathan testified the next day, acknowledging aspects of his business history that made headlines but refusing to deflect responsibility. "I've made choices I regret," he told the court. "I've operated in gray areas of legality and morality, but I'm working to change that, to build businesses that don't require shadows to survive." The trial lasted 3 weeks. In the end, all 3 defendants were found guilty. David Chen received 25 years for conspiracy, attempted homicide, and the newly filed charges related to Thomas Carter's disappearance. Mrs. Chen received 12 years. Richard Kane, who had cooperated more fully with prosecutors, received 8 years. Emily felt no satisfaction watching them sentenced, only a deep sadness for the waste of it all. Her father's life, the years of pain, the cycles of revenge that had nearly claimed Nathan too. But it was over. Finally. Truly over. Summer settled over Chicago with warmth and long daylight hours. The Thomas Carter Foundation officially launched with a ceremony attended by families of missing persons, victim advocates, and several city officials. Emily stood at the podium, looking out at people who understood her journey because they were living their own versions of it. "My father disappeared 8 years ago," she began. "For most of that time, the world treated him as someone who chose to leave, but he didn't choose. He was taken from us because he tried to do the right thing. This foundation exists to ensure that other families don't have to fight alone for truth, for justice, for acknowledgement of their loved one's worth." The crowd applauded. Nathan stood in the back, watching with unmistakable pride. Beside him, Marcus nodded approvingly. This was what transformation looked like. Not erasure of the past, but building something meaningful from its ashes. After the ceremony, Emily and Nathan walked along the lakefront, enjoying the summer evening. Sailboats dotted the water and children played in the park, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze. "You did well today," Nathan said. "Your father would be incredibly proud." "I hope so. I hope wherever he is, whatever happens after, he knows that I found the truth, that I didn't give up on him. He knows. And your mother knows. They're both proud of who you've become." Emily stopped walking, turning to face the lake. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of gold and orange. "Do you ever think about that night? About how everything would be different if I'd made a different choice? Every day. If you'd run, I'd likely be gone. David's plan would have succeeded. Your questions about your father would remain unanswered. And Nathan paused. I would never have had the chance to become something other than what I was. Do you regret it? The changes, the restructuring, leaving behind the old ways? Sometimes it's harder, less profitable, more complicated. But regret? No." Nathan met her eyes. "You showed me that there are different kinds of strength, different definitions of success. I'm building something now that I'm not ashamed of, that doesn't require constant vigilance against betrayal. That's worth more than any amount of money or power I had before." "What happens now? After all this, the trial, the foundation, the business changes, what comes next?" Nathan smiled. "We keep building. We keep trying to do better than yesterday. We honor the people we've lost by living with integrity they'd recognize." He gestured at the sunset, the city, the vast lake before them. "We live, Emily, fully, honestly, without the weight of unanswered questions holding us back." Emily nodded, feeling something settle in her chest. Peace, perhaps, or acceptance. She had come to Chicago seeking answers about her father's disappearance. She'd found those answers, along with a purpose she'd never anticipated, and connections that had transformed her understanding of strength, justice, and redemption. The fire that should have destroyed Nathan Cole had instead purified both their lives, burning away pretense and forcing truth to the surface. They had emerged from those flames changed, connected by something stronger than the secrets they'd both carried. As they walked back toward the city, the lights beginning to twinkle against the gathering dusk, Emily felt her father's presence like a warm wind at her back, not haunting her anymore, but supporting her. He had tried to do the right thing in an impossible situation. Now his daughter was doing the same, one day at a time, building a life that honored his memory while creating something entirely her own. Everyone had run from the explosion that November night, except the maid who dragged the crime boss from the fire. That choice had changed 2 lives forever, setting them both on paths they never could have imagined. It wasn't the ending either of them had expected. It was better. It was real. It was theirs. And that was enough.